I would now invite you to be seated as I call Patrick forward to say a few words about his dad.
It's hard to put into words the impact one person can have in a lifetime. And in the case of my dad, it was quite an impact. A hard worker, a go-getter, a fun-loving guy, the life of the party. He never stopped. Even in just the last 12 months, he traveled over 37,000 miles from Portugal to New Zealand. And he nearly finished his latest home project, a grouping of 5 cottages on the shores of Lake Huron. He lived life every day. We are all just given so many days. Some are great, some go by without memory, others are sad or difficult or painful. But the goal is to make the most of each one of them. They are all gifts. When looking back at one's lifetime, there seems to be a handful of days that truly make all the difference. My dad was no exception. A handful of days truly made a difference for Walt and for those around him. Without those pivotal days, we all wouldn't be sitting in this church. And I would like to take a moment to look back at some of Walt's history and highlight just 4 days that changed everything. So let's go back to 1968. Walt was a student of Western Michigan University. Living in Kalamazoo, he came home to Mount Clemens for spring break so he could hang out with his good buds from Fraser High School. A Fraser friend of his had been set up on a blind date, and at the last minute, he couldn't go. So he asked my dad if he could go in his place. The plan was to go to the Detroit Auto Show, hit up the bowling alley, and then finish at Buddy's Pizza. He was told to meet at a friend's house. It was there, in the living room, that my dad first saw my love. It was love at first sight. And it's one day that forever changed the trajectory of us all. Fast forward, and Walt and Eileen were married, built a house in Milford with help from my grandfather, and they had 3 kids. My dad worked 3 jobs, spending his days at Blue Cross, delivering papers for the Detroit Free Press early in the morning, and delivering firewood on the weekends. In 1975, my dad was asked to attend a business conference for Blue Cross in San Francisco. He asked his boss if he could bring his wife along. And after the conference, the 2 of them could explore more of San Francisco and visit some of the wineries people were starting to talk about just north of the city. One pivotal sunny fall day, they drove over the Golden Gate Bridge, made their way to the Napa Valley, and both saw grapevines for the first time. They were amazed. They fell in love. Somehow, someday, they wanted to be winemakers. And it was on that day that a dream was born. But life marched on, and my dad continued to work his way up, climbing the corporate ladder of commercial real estate development, first in 1979 with an opportunity in Cleveland, Ohio. And then in 1982, he moved the family to Houston, Texas. They bought a house in Kingwood, an hour outside of Houston, and they settled into nearly 15 years of life in suburbia. Church, school, days at the community pool. And for my dad, a nearly 2-hour commute each day on the 59 freeway. After taking a promotion at another small real estate development firm, my parents were able to save enough money to build a lake cottage nearby on Lake Livingston, with my dad doing much of the work himself. It was then, one day, in 1992, in the midst of all the fun, that my dad got the news that no one with 3 kids and multiple mortgages wants to hear. You've been laid off. And it was a day that changed everything. With few options, my dad, age 46, decided to risk everything and start his very own commercial real estate development firm. Despite not having any financial resources to speak of, my dad was rich in other things: trustworthiness, respect, honesty, integrity, humor, It was these qualities that attracted some powerful people in Houston who had to make decisions on who to trust with lots of money, big projects, and tight deadlines. From near bankruptcy, my dad went on to build his first successful business all his own, retiring just 4 years later at age 50. Early retirement took them to Sand Key, Florida, where they purchased a high-rise condo on the 17th floor overlooking the Gulf of Mexico. Us kids went off to college, and life was good, but in no way was it over yet. The time had come to realize their decades-long dream. It was time to start a winery. A search began looking at potential sites from coast to coast. They recalled their childhoods coming from Detroit up north, and had heard of vineyards growing along the shores of Grand Traverse Bay. In 1999, on a crisp fall day, their car made their way up Center Road and hung a right at Blue Water. From that day forward, nothing was ever the same. You see, it was just 4 days. From a blind date, to a trip to California, to getting laid off, to making a turn on Blue Water Road. 4 days that truly changed it all. You know, I've always looked at my dad as an American success story. I've tried to think about what that means and what qualities it takes. While I won't pretend to know all the answers, my dad, by his example, taught us a few things. Work hard and you'll get somewhere. His Polish roots taught him that. Keep your head down. Focus on what you feel is right and not what others expect. Lead by example with grit and humor. Be a good neighbor. Respect your community. Have fun. Always have a project. Never give up. And with every success, bring others along with you. Never miss an opportunity to tell a joke. And cherish your family. Dad, thanks for leaving the world a better place. Thank you for making your success our success. Thanks for bringing us all along for the ride. And while we may only all live once, if we do it right, once is enough. And Dad, you did it right. And so, as you always said, so long, like your nose. And we'll see you around, like a donut. We love you, and we'll miss you.